Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. This is a Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Miriam Ogoto, and here is the latest news from across the continent of Africa. A UN spokesperson, Farhan Haq, has said that the body wants the perpetrators of killings in the Democratic Republic of Congo to be brought to justice after it confirmed the discovery of two mass graves in the Ituri province in the eastern part of the country. They found bodies of some 42 people, including 12 women and 6 children, in Nyamamba village, and then the bodies of 7 men in Boge village, about 30 kilometers east of the city of Bunia, as they had reported. There has been suggestion linking the deaths of the Codeco militia group, but Mr. Hag said that it cannot be confirmed and further investigation will be needed. He also added that the UN is conducting patrols in the area and supporting DRC's militia. We go to Ethiopia, and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, has refuted remarks by African Union AU mediator Olusegun Obasanjo that Eritrean forces have withdrawn from Ethiopia's northern Tigray region following a truce to end a 2-year civil war. Mr. Obasanjo told Financial Times last week that all Eritrean forces who had been fighting alongside the Ethiopian federal troops in the Tigray war that broke out in November 2020 had pulled back to the Eritrean border. However, TPLF officer Professor Kindeya Kabrehiwot on Thursday morning posted an undated picture of Eritrean soldiers purportedly in the town of Shire. Mr. Obasanjo's comments were also refuted by TPLF spokesperson Getachew Reda, who said AU officials should do their job first before such remarks are made. The TPLF forces have been handing over heavy arms to federal troops as part of the peace deal with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's administration. And then in Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni has warned against campaigns supporting rights of homosexuals in the country. Homosexuals acts are already illegal in Uganda. The president termed gay rights as nonsense during remarks made on Wednesday at a graduation ceremony at the National Defense College. He added that he was glad to have attended a recent meeting in the US where issues of gay rights were never brought up. And then we go to the DRC, and market traders in the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo have expressed dismay of being forced to dismantle their stalls ahead of the visit by Pope Francis. Officials in Kinshasa say they were making the streets clean and tidy in time for the Pope's arrival at the end of the month. Some traders complained that the police using crowbars and bulldozers had been heavy-handed. They also said many people had lost their goods. The affected streets include Lumumba Boulevard and the main thoroughfare from the airport, on which a gala welcome will be staged for Pope Francis. But hawkers are angry that they are also being forced out of the side streets around the city center. We head over to Gambia, and the International Police Agency Interpol has issued a red notice for foreign nations to arrest a military officer accused of plotting to overthrow the government in the Gambia last month. Local officials there have said the red notice for the low-ranking Gambian officer Lamin Jadama means that 8 officers have now been identified as suspects in the alleged coup plot. Gambian officials say he is a fugitive from justice, and any person caught aiding or colluding with him will be dealt with according to the law. 7 of the accused, including the alleged ringleader Lance Corporal Sana Fadera, who have also been arrested. They appeared in the High Court in the capital Banjul on charges of treason and conspiracy to commit felony. 2 civilians and a police officer were also in court on charges of treason and concealment of treason. The accused were expected to file a plea, but this did not happen. Instead, the case was postponed as the state did not file its indictment, and 2 of the accused soldiers did not have legal representation. Justice Basiru Mahoney ordered the state to file the indictment by 23rd January. He also ordered the 2 unrepresented soldiers to get lawyers or for the state to provide them with legal aid. back to the DRC, and President Felix Tshisekedi on Tuesday said that the M23 rebel group had not fully withdrawn from areas it seized in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, accusing the militia of faking an agreed pullback of its forces. Regional leaders brokered an agreement in November under which the Tutsi-led group was meant to withdraw from recently seized positions by January 15, 2023, as part of efforts to end a conflict that has displaced at least 450,000 people and sparked a diplomatic crisis between Congo and the neighbor Rwanda. President Tshisekedi said that they have not left, and despite the international pressure, the group is still there. President was speaking during a panel session at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And then we go to Nigeria, and despite spending over $1 billion to reclaim Boko Haram-held territories in Borno, Adamawa and Yobe states since 2015, Nigeria's security and that of the Lake Chad Basin remains unstable due to lingering conflicts in Libya, the Central African Republic, and Russia's aggression in Ukraine. That is according to President Muhammadu Buhari, who said on Tuesday that shortly after he received an award for strengthening peace in Africa, conferred on him by Abu Dhabi Peace Forum in Nouakchott, in the Mauritanian capital. The president premised his argument on the free circulation of all sorts of small and light weapons orchestrated by foreign fighters. He also reasoned that the idleness of African youths and non-inclusion in discussing issues that concern them is providing a steady recruitment pool for the extremist organizations wreaking havoc in various parts of the continent. He therefore urged leaders to place a premium on youth development with more seriousness and actionable ideas in promoting skills acquisitions while discouraging idleness. That is President Buhari, and you already know that I have so much to say about that. But let's just first go to Burkina Faso, where the president of the transition in Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, estimated on Tuesday that a new phase had been triggered by the terrorists against civilians a few days after the kidnapping of over 50 women in the north of the country. Thursday and Friday, after 50 women were kidnapped by suspected jihadists in the two locals, north and west of the town Abinda in the north, according to authorities of the region. Now, ground and aerial searches are underway to find them. The UN has demanded their immediate release, and I think the latest on that report is that some women have been able to escape from these kidnappers, but just a handful of them. It's not very clear how many of them, but the majority still remain under captive by these extremist groups. Now, the Vatican Chargé d'Affaires in Juba is urging South Sudanese to forgive one another and reconcile ahead of Pope Francis' planned visit. Monsignor Leonard Paul is also appealing for unity of the people of South Sudan. According to the Vatican, Pope Francis will travel to the DRC on January 31st. He will then come to Juba on the 3rd of February and spend alongside the Archbishop of Canterbury and the moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland. The long-awaited visit of the Pontiff was cancelled in July last year due to health problems. The historic papal trip will mark the Pope's third visit to sub-Saharan Africa. It will also mark the first time a Pope has visited the world's youngest nation, and only the second papal visit to the Congo, which is home to Africa's largest Catholic population. And police in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo on Wednesday reportedly fired tear gas and live bullets to disperse people protesting against the presence of the regional forces EAC. The East African Regional Force, composed of soldiers from Kenya, Uganda, South Sudan and Burundi, was deployed in November 2022 to enforce peace in that part of the country. But activists have accused it of inaction and called for protest on Wednesday in the provincial capital of Goma. Local reports say tear gas and live bullets were fired at the protesters. At least 2 journalists were hit by what was believed to be a tear gas canister, but they survived without injuries. 2 other journalists have been taken into police custody. On Tuesday, the mayor of Goma had banned the protest and said that only representatives of the activists will be allowed to drop a petition at his office. The regional force has appeared to be making progress. One of the major armed groups operating in the region, M23, has already handed over previously seized territories in line with an agreement reached by heads of state at a summit last year in the Angolan capital, Luanda. But speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos on Tuesday, like I've said there earlier, President Tshisekedi said the M23 rebels had not withdrawn from those areas but were moving around, redeploying. Excuse me, let me just take some water. Sorry. I'll take a short break, then I'll come back. I apologize for that. I'm having a bit of some difficulties, but I think I will just finish up with the news. And so we head over to Cameroon, where Cameroon's government deployed at least 100 troops on Wednesday to Gayama, a village on the border with Nigeria, after clashes between Cameroonian separatists and Nigerian herders left at least 12 people dead. Cameroonian officials say the fighting broke out 6 days ago after herders who crossed the border in search of food for their cattle refused to pay taxes the rebels had demanded. Abdoulaye Aliou, the highest-ranking government official in Minchum, the administrative unit in charge of Gayama, said the rebels killed 2 herders immediately upon their refusal to pay. The surviving herders, who are ethnic Fulani from Taraba and Benue states, returned home and organized a counter-attack. And then we head over to Malawi. Excuse me. Malawi's president fired the director of public prosecution, Stephen Kayuni, for allegedly abusing his office to avenge what he saw as a personal slight. Malawian President Lazarus Chakwera announced the dismissal during a televised national address on Wednesday. Chakwera was reacting to the findings of a commission of inquiry he established last month to investigate the circumstances that led to the arrest of the country's anti-corruption chief, Martha Chizuma. The commission found that Chizuma was arrested a few days after Kanyuni complained to police that he felt criminally injured by statements Chizuma made in January 2022. In an audio that was later leaked to social media, Chizuma said that high-ranking officials, including lawyers, a judge and government authorities, were hindering her fight against corruption. Chizuma was arrested on December 6th, but detained for only a few hours following calls from other officials, ordinary Malawians, and the British and US Embassy for her release. And then we go to Somalia. And people in Somalia are highly traumatized due to political instability, prolonged violence, and humanitarian crisis, a new health study has now shown. A joint study by the United Nations, Somalia's health ministry, and country's national university found that mental disorder is prevalent across the country. It says that cases are about 77% higher than a previous study by the World Health Organization, which suggested that nearly 40% of the population in Somalia had a mental or a psychological disorder. The study further said that the prevalence of mental disorders among the young is significantly higher than previously reported. And the study was conducted between October 25th and November 15th, 2022. The data was collected from 713 participants in the town of Baidoa, Kismayo, Dolo, and Dolo. The majority of the participants were younger than 35 years old, and 58.5% of that were male. And then we end our bulletin from South Africa. Excuse my hoarseness, I'm having some trouble with my throat, so just bear with me. Excuse me. South Africa's military has announced it will next month hold joint military drills with Russia and China off its coast. The drills will run for 10 days from 17th February to 27th of February in the port city of Durban and Richards Bay. The aim is sharing operational skills and knowledge, the South African National Defence Force said. South Africa was among countries that abstained from taking sides in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The country assumed the chairmanship of the BRICS, a group of nations that bring together Brazil, Russia, India and China last month. This will be the second time such a military drill is taking place. The first was held in November 2019 in Cape Town, and that is the latest news from across the continent of Africa. We have so much to talk about. I don't know if my throat will allow me, but I'll try. If I'm unable to, then you'll have to excuse me. We can pick on some of these issues tomorrow. So this drill by South Africa, they're having together with China and Russia. And as much as I do understand, they are in the BRICS together. BRICS is a group of countries. It's is a coming together of 5 countries, and I think BRICS is the acronym of these countries, and it starts with Brazil, then Russia, India, China, then South Africa, and so they're holding this military drill. I don't know, with everything else that is going on in the world, if this will be the right time that South Africa would feel it should participate. As much as I do understand, it did not take sides, even during several votes at the United Nations that were voting against Russia's invasion of Ukraine. South Africa opted to not take sides. And so I do understand their position as a country, and I think a lot of other countries in the continent, a few others, decided not to take sides, and that is their right as countries, so we cannot condemn any country. You just do and act according to what's best for your country. So, but holding this military drill, I think the timing is suspect, and with everything else going on in the world, I don't think this would have been the right thing for South Africa to do at this time. But hey, what do I know? So they're all having these drills, and this is not the first time that such military drills have happened. They have happened before, and so they will take place for 10 days. Now, there's something that I want us to talk about. What President Buhari said before, okay. So President Buhari, first of all, he was being awarded on Tuesday, he was being awarded, and he was being awarded an award for strengthening peace in Africa. And this was conferred on him by the Abu Dhabi Peace Forum in Nouakchott, the Mauritanian capital. Strengthening peace in Africa. Does Abu Dhabi watch any news from Nigeria? Does Abu Dhabi, the leadership there, know anything that is happening in this continent, and specifically in Nigeria, where we've had a president for the last almost 8 years who has been very clueless over how to secure peace, because you cannot secure peace without addressing the war, without addressing the issue of insecurity that has been rampant in Nigeria, without addressing the issue of negative ethnicity, without addressing the issue of the herders and the farmers who have been fighting. These are things that have been rampant. These are things that are present challenges that Nigeria is facing, and they have increased under President Buhari. And President Buhari has not really done much to adequately find solutions or address these issues. So for these Abu Dhabians, it's called what? The Peace Forum. The Peace Forum. So they awarded President Buhari an award for strengthening peace in Africa. I don't know where else that President Buhari has strengthened. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you could make me understand, because I am just trying to recall in my head where else has he participated. We can say Olusegun Obasanjo was appointed by the African Union to mediate in the Ethiopian peace process, in the conflict in Ethiopia. He struggled with it until the former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, joined in the process, and then it became a success. But even with that, he's now causing a lot of damage, and we'll get to that in just a short bit. But for Buhari, I don't know what he has done. I don't know what kind of activities or initiatives he has even started, even in ECOWAS. Forget Africa, it's just even in ECOWAS that are geared towards strengthening peace in Africa. Oh, these are just things these are just the words we give because we can award people. I mean, some of these things must be, they must have some meaning. And while he was receiving this award, President Buhari, in his true fashion, of course, said that the country has used about $1 billion to reclaim territories that had previously been held by Boko Haram in Borno, in Adamawa, and in Yobe states. And then he went ahead to say that Nigerian security and that of Lake Chad Basin remains unstable due to lingering conflicts in Libya, Central African Republic, and Russia's aggression. President Buhari, even before Russia's aggression in Ukraine, Nigeria had its own, are you serious? Nigeria had its own problems. And the reason why I'm saying this is true to Buhari's style and way of addressing issues, what he does is he does not address issues and he does not take responsibility. So what we're going to do now, let's just blame the war in Ukraine that has been there for like what? Come next month is like a year, right? But he will blame that. And when did the Chibok girls, when were they kidnapped? When were these other kidnappings been happening? You know, and this news that we've been having here, they've been ongoing for years now, President Buhari. So we cannot blame the issue of Nigeria security on Russia's aggression in Ukraine, in the Central African Republic conflict, and in the Libya conflict. They might have a little bit to do with, they just might be adding into the conflict in the larger Sahel region. But these factors have nothing to do with what is happening in Nigeria. What has happened in Nigeria is a leadership that has been clueless, a leadership that has been aloof, a leadership that has been out of touch, does not know from its left from its right, a leadership that has shown very little commitment as far as solving the issue of Nigeria's security is concerned. And that has been displayed in the manner in which your government has been handling the issue of security. So Russia's aggression in Ukraine, no, that you can't bring that right now. The issues of Central African Republic, that can't be. That can't be. Then you can't draw parallels with these other, what is going on, situations in these other countries, and say now because of Central African Republic's conflict and because of the Libya's conflict, and that's why Nigeria is perennially having security problems. No, it is because the government of Nigeria, and you have admitted before President Buhari that you have been unable to handle the security properly. But it's interesting that you don't want to take, responsibility, and you're saying that there's free circulation of all sorts of arms and light weapons. Well, that's why you have the security agencies in Nigeria to handle that. That's why you have all this. And then now you go ahead and say that the idleness of African youth and non-inclusion in discussing issues. Now, if I was hearing this from Aliko Dangote, then I'd be like, yeah, he's making a lot of sense. But for someone who is a head of state, who had the mandate and the power and the ability to effect change in some of these things, why didn't you have a program that addressed the issue of inclusion in your country? Why didn't you address the issue of unemployment? And now you're coming out, you're telling us that it's because of the idleness of the African youth. What are you talking about? You're a head of state. For heaven's sakes, you're supposed to have an agenda, or at least when you're being elected, I'm sure. I don't know what your agenda was, but I remember the first time you're running, you're saying you'll get rid of Boko Haram in 100 days. Well, that is almost 8 years ago. That hasn't happened, right? But anything else you haven't done. Not much that you've been able to achieve. And so you can't stand in a platform being awarded with this award that does not even match the kind of things that you've been able to achieve as far as achieving peace in Africa. In fact, it's the whole of Africa is concerned. And then you're standing there and just saying, the reason why we're having problems in this continent is because of the idleness of the African youth. Like, what? And non-inclusion in discussion of issues. Why didn't you include the many young people in Nigeria as far as decision-making is concerned? What did your government do? In fact, when you stand in such a platform, you're supposed to highlight. You're not supposed to lament the way I'm sitting here lamenting, or the way anybody else without the power would lament. You're supposed to say, to stand there and say, as a government, this is how I've been able to address the issue of youth unemployment. This is how I've been able to address the issue of inclusion, because it is a problem in our country. But you can't stand there and lament just like anybody else, just like the same way your citizens are having troubles with these things. You're standing there and you're saying, you have not been very inclusive, because this is what I'm getting from what you're saying, the issue of non-inclusion in discussing issues that concern them. Why now that you know that is the problem, President Buhari, why didn't you take the initiative to try to be deliberate in how you engage with the young people in Nigeria, especially these areas that are prone to these young people getting involved in these extremism activities and these other activities that are causing the massive insecurity in Nigeria? So you're saying because of non-inclusion of discussing issues that concern them, this has provided a steady recruitment pool for the extremist organizations wreaking havoc in various parts of the continent. Forget the continent. Let's just stick with Nigeria. Forget the continent, because you can't say the continent. Out here, my government has done things differently. In Uganda, President Yoweri Museveni is doing things differently. In Rwanda, so you don't balkanize the rest of the leadership. We don't have perfect leaders, but we have other leaders who take the security of their people seriously. So you can't balkanize every leader in that bandwagon of leaders who have been unable to address the issue of insecurity in their country. But I do agree, it is a problem that we have in this continent. And now that you are outlining some of the underlying factors, I'm just looking at it differently. So you've been knowing the root cause of this problem, and yet how your government have been addressing these issues that now you're saying has been not at all, and now you're urging leaders to place a premium on youth development. What did you do? Don't urge leaders. You should stand there and tell us, I, as President Buhari, having been president in Nigeria for 8 years almost now, this is what I've been able to do in terms of placing a premium to the young people in my country. He said, with more seriousness and actionable ideas. So you should be standing there and giving us ideas, not lectures, because you are in a position where you're supposed to be implementing these things you're urging other leaders to do. And so because you failed in doing this, You don't even have moral authority to stand on any platform and lecture any leader on what you think they should be doing, and you have failed to do that while you are the president. You're still the president until the elections will be held next month. So you can't tell people what to do. President Buhari, you can't tell people how to solve insecurity. You've been unable to do that, even unwilling. You've been unwilling to do that. I think that would be the right word. So stop this rhetorics. You've let down the people of Nigeria. You've let down the young people of Nigeria. So for you to stand in that platform, being awarded with this award, and now urging other leaders to place a premium on youth development with more seriousness and actionable ideas, while you had all this time as the head of Nigeria, and you really didn't take your own words. So why should anybody believe anything that you're saying? Why should you take anything you're saying seriously, President Buhari? I mean, the manner in which we joke in this continent is just it's just something else. Anyway, another place where we're having trouble. All the years he's president, he was attending, or he's been attending at the World Economic Forum in Davos in Switzerland, and while he was there on Tuesday, he said M23 have not moved from the areas that they were supposed to have moved. Remember, there's a report that came in earlier that had suggested that M23 had pulled back from some of these areas that they had gained ground on, part of DRC. And so President Felix Tshisekedi says, no, we have not. And he says, despite the international pressure, the group is still there. And then he continued to say, they pretend to move, they act like they're moving, but they are not. They're simply moving around. So they're going in circles, redeploying themselves elsewhere, and they stay in the towns that they have captured, he said. His comments are most outspoken from the Congolese authorities so far on how they view the implementation of the peace deal. And this is what the spokesperson for M23 said, Lawrence Kanyaka. He said President Tshisekedi has only this to say: it is the government that does not respect, it is his government that does not respect the ceasefire. It also continues to arm armed groups. Now President Tshisekedi has gotten himself in an argument match with the rebel group that he wants to leave his country. M23 is responding to these claims that he made in Davos, Switzerland, and they're saying, no, it is President Tshisekedi who is continuing to arm the rebels on his side. And by this, I'm sure they mean the FLDDR, the rebel FDLR, the Hutu rebels from that have been accused, that he's being accused of supporting in the Democratic Republic of Congo, who are fighting the M23. So the M23 are saying, you are the one who is violating this ceasefire. And I think this is something that has come up in the different conversations we've had surrounding this matter, because the world has just focused on Rwanda's and its alleged support of M23 rebels. But there is this rebel group that is said to be in the Democratic Republic of Congo, that the government of the DRC has also been accused of supporting, and their majority Hutu, the M23 are majority Tutsis. And so, but nobody talks about the FDLR. Nobody talks about them. So, the M23 is now saying, no, you're the ones who is not, violating the ceasefire because of your continued support of these armed groups in your country. And I would suppose that is the FDLR, and the one who is not respecting the ceasefire. And there's a time that this has been brought up again, and President Paul Kagame of Rwanda also brought it up some times back. But President Tshisekedi, whenever this is brought up, he does not respond. He does not respond to that part. So I always wonder what his silence means, because those are very grave. Accusations. Now, like I said, former president of Nigeria, who was involved in the mediation process, still involved. It's not totally over. In Ethiopia, was it a couple of days ago? He said that in an interview with a news outlet, he had mentioned that about 600,000 people had been killed in the Tigray region. And so the TPLF has refuted remarks by the African Union mediator Olusegun Obasanjo. And also, after saying that over 600,000 people were murdered, he also said Eritrean forces had left that part and they had retreated back to Eritrea. And I think I reported that here. But now the TPLF is saying that they're refuting these remarks by the AU mediator, former president of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, that Eritrean forces have withdrawn from Ethiopia's northern Tigray region following a truce to end the 2-year civil war. Mr. Obasanjo told Financial Times last week that all Eritrean forces who had been fighting alongside Ethiopia federal troops in the Tigray war that broke out in November 2020 had pulled back to the Eritrean border. However, TPLF official Professor Kindea Gebrehiwot on Thursday morning posted an undated picture of Eritrean soldiers purportedly in the town of Shire. Mr. Obasanjo's comments they have been refuted by TPLF spokesperson Getachew Reda, who said AU officials should do their jobs fast before such remarks are made. So in other words, they're saying former President Obasanjo, stop being careless with just making remarks, and this process is very sensitive. So before you go out there and make some remarks that are not substantiated, could you mind just making sure that you check the facts and you see what's really happening in the ground, and you check with the people on the ground if at all these Eritrean soldiers have left the Tigray region, because they're saying no. So the TPLF spokesperson is telling President Obasanjo, former, that you need to do your job fast before such remarks are made. The TPLF forces have been handing over heavy arms to the federal troops as part of the peace deal with Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's administration. And separately, the TPLF-run Dimtsi Weyane TV reported that an Amhara militia group is allegedly forcing residents in a disputed area between Tigray and Amhara regions to register as ethnic Amhara. The Wolkayit Segede region was captured by Amhara forces during the civil war, leading to deadly violence. So that is something that is also ongoing. But I think this goes to speak to perhaps this mediation process. And maybe it's things like this that made the mediation process, while it was still being led by Obasanjo, not very successful. Remember, they were successful when Kenya's former president, Uhuru Kenyatta, joined the mediation process last year in October, and they were able to hammer a deal on the 2nd of November. And President Kenyatta does not say much. He does not tweet. In fact, I don't know if he's back on Twitter yet. Kenyans had made him leave Twitter a few years ago. But before he comes out to make these statements, he weighs and he takes his time, and he makes sure that he has the facts with him. Because this is not just a process, General Obasanjo, that you just speak because you have a camera and you have a microphone, and now they want you to say something and you just talk without thinking. You might cause harm, and that might negate every gain that has been made so far in the process. And TPLF had not refuted that part that he said that some 600,000 plus people were killed during this conflict. That means there could be some truth to that, maybe loosely, because even the Human Rights Watch chairperson in Ethiopia said that the death tolls could be between 100,000 people to 1 million. So somewhere in between, from 100,000 to 1 million. Can you imagine that many people would have died? So that means the number could only be higher. And so they did not refute that part. The only part that they had a problem with is when Mr. Obasanjo said that the Eritrean forces have left the TPLF region. And I think I reported that here, the Tigray region, sorry. So if the Eritrean forces have not left the Tigray region, African Union, how are you going to deal with that? Now, if the representative that you had chosen to go and oversee all these things and bring you the report, is already somewhere thinking that these forces have left, but on the ground, allegedly, things are not what, according to the report that he's giving, they're not tallying, because apparently those forces are still there. So which information do you take here? So I agree with the TPLF spokesperson. AU officials should do their jobs properly first before you come out and give out this information. Should make sure that you check, you counter-check your information, and you're sure. Because now what you're being told by the TPLF is that the Eritrean forces have not left. So if they have not left, an AU, I think, now should go and see if they can ascertain this information and see these disparities and see where does the truth lie. And then after that, take some action, because this mediation process, Eritrean forces are supposed to have gone back to Eritrea by right now. So for them continuing being in that region is just a show of aggression, and who knows what might happen after that. And the TPLF have agreed to honor their part of the agreement, and they're giving back the heavy weaponry, and they're cooperating with the government, and you're working on that. So if the government of Ethiopia cannot ensure these Eritrean forces are out of that country, that you are also not respecting that agreement. And I know the Eritrean forces were not part of the conversation you're having during the mediation process. I didn't read a clause there that said they should go back, but I think they should go back. I think it's given in the spirit of moving forward and letting Ethiopians solve their own problems and let Ethiopian communities reconcile with themselves. The Eritrean forces should pack and ship and go back to Eritrea. So if this is not the case, then AU, I'd like to know what other step are you going to take? And now clearly you can't depend on the report by your chief mediator of that process, or let's say Gunnar Basanjo, because if what the TPLF are saying, then he brought you a false report. The Eritrean forces are still there. So you need to look further, and you need to ascertain this by yourselves. And then after that, I think you need to make a decision. They need to make a decision on how to deal with that, because I think Eritrean forces should not still be in that region. It's not helping the situation, and it might act to, put a damper on all the gains that have been made. Now, this mass grave that has been discovered by the United Nations in the DRC, it's very disturbing. So there's still not much from this news. About 42 bodies were found, 12 women, 6 children, and 7 men, and in different villages. In Bogi village and in Nyamamba village and another village. So the United Nations, I think MONUSCO might have to take up, might have to start a investigation over that, because that might be signs of something bigger. Yeah, so we need to know who are these people and who killed them and who buried them in a mass grave. We need to find out about that. And I think there was also another news of the people in the DRC protesting because they want the EAC force to be removed from the DRC. I think I said it here, and I'll be very quick again with this story. Sorry, because my time is up. Well, the EAC met and decided on forming this force and sending this force to the Democratic Republic of Congo, all the East African community countries, except for Rwanda, because it has been heavily accused. But I should have you know, and because we know that it's not just Rwanda that has been accused, as a neighboring country that has also orchestrated and participated in this, in fueling this conflict. Burundi has been accused. Uganda has been accused. So even before this force had readied to go to the DRC, there were already protests against this. And I think I said here time and time again, if these countries feel, going there, they're already compromised. They're already being accused by these people. So this can't inspire any level of confidence, because now the people, they are saying, since they've been here, there's nothing this force has been able to achieve. And I said before, when they were getting ready to form this force and for them to send these troops, that in the spirit of having a genuine solution to this problem, Uganda should not have its troops there. Burundi should not have its troops there. And Rwanda. These three countries should not have their troops there, because there are people in the DRC who are feeling they are part of the people who have inflicted so much pain, who have been part and parcel of this conflict. And now you're bringing them back to be our savior. So that does not augur well with a lot of people. So I knew this would be a problem. So now countries like Kenya, who have no stake in that conflict, our troops will find themselves in danger, and other troops, maybe even from South Sudan, who had also sent their troops last week. So that is a mistake that should have not happened. We should not have had troops from these three countries going to the Democratic Republic of Congo. That should not have happened. But we did not care what the people there felt, and so we decided everybody will just go except for Rwanda. And now the people, they are protesting, and they don't want the EAC force there. So who knows what will happen after this? So we have to be careful. Otherwise, the presence of these countries will now is proving to be counterproductive to the whole mission. It's counterproductive. And I sort of lean towards what I saw some interviews from the residents there who were participating in this protest yesterday, and they were saying, we can't, there's no tangible results. We can't see what these forces have been doing well. The UN forces have been there since 2013, and they're like over 16,000 of them, 18,000 matter of fact, together with other staff, except, outside of the combat, or outside of the military. But they've not been able to achieve much anyway. So I don't know what magic they expected the EAC forces to do in the few days that they had arrived, but perhaps there was some level of hope because the EAC forces had a different mandate maybe. So they're saying we're not seeing anything that these forces have done, so why do we still have them here? Why do we still have them here? But I think it's because of these two countries. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.